Okay, great. Muted. Got that all taken care of. Well, welcome in, everybody. Welcome back to Let's Talk Live here on the LTL Media channel. No trial today, and we're going to resume testimony tomorrow and on Thursday. Thursday, I will be in court. I was invited to go sit in with the Reed family, so I'm anticipating being able to do that because it's going to give me a brand new perspective as to how that courtroom is commanded, what is going on. I'll be able to actually see the jury for the first time. Can't wait to see that and see how they're reacting. So I'm very honored to be asked to go in. And then what I'm going to do is right when I come out from trial, I'll do a live so you can watch everybody walk out and get kind of the atmosphere outside. And then Thursday night, unfortunately, I thought I was going to have Tom CPU live in my studio, but there's still no air conditioner. And it's very, very hot up there. I just went up there today after work, and it's like 100 degrees in that room. And I just, with all the lights in there, can't do it. I'm hoping that gets all ironed out this week. And then possibly next week, we'll start getting some live guests in there. So Thursday, essentially what's going to happen is Tom's going to join me virtually. I have Jess Machado on virtually as well. That'll be her first weekly update with me about a lot of the in-court action. But anyway, what I wanted to do tonight is just go through some cross-examination. We heard from Lieutenant Kevin O'Hara, and we also heard from forensics analysis Maureen Hartnett. And she was the one that found this apparent hair on the back of Karen Reed's SUV. She also noted the damage of the broken taillight and found the perched pieces of glass on the rear bumper that is supposedly pieces of that drinking glass. When we first heard about it at first, it was supposedly embedded. Alan Jackson made the point, were they embedded? She said, no, looks like they were just sitting on top of the bumper. So, we'll get into that. She also was the one that examined John O'Keefe's clothes as well. And then we had Lieutenant O'Hara that came on and essentially on cross basically said he would prefer a secure scene. And as we looked at some of the photos that he had taken and that were presented, one of the things that I thought was very notable was you're out in a snowstorm. Supposedly you're saying that your team, evidence collection team, has never collected evidence in a snowstorm before. You think that they would be trained for this. And there was no evidence markers, those little numbered yellow stands. I mean, that was one of the first things that pointed out to me. I was like, okay, that's interesting. You would think we're out in the snow. We're in a challenging environment. We're collecting high profile evidence for a high profile case of a murdered Boston police officer. You would think that, proper protocol would be there, but that was none of that. Let's see. And there was a quote I had here from Hartnett. She said, I cannot assert when the glass, this is going back to the pieces on the bumper. I cannot assert when the glass pieces came to rest on the bumper, she remarked, nor can I determine when that hair was deposited on the vehicle. And I find it very hard. I'm having a hard time figuring this out, and maybe y'all can help me. But how does a hair on the back of a car, SUV, and how does glass perched, not embedded in the bumper, perched on top of the bumper, get brought up onto a flatbed, get tied down and taken all the way back from Dayton, Massachusetts, all the way to Canton, Massachusetts, probably close to a 30-minute ride over 20, probably 5 miles in a blizzard, in a snowstorm with rain and snow and sleet and water. And, there was snow on the top of Karen's SUV that melted. And how does that make it all the way down? Oh, and then nevertheless, we take the car off the flatbed, drive it into the Sally Port, and ta-da, all of this magic evidence just stayed there. I just find it kind of hard to believe. So, anyway, we'll go through some of this cross. I'm just going to go up to the chat. I want to let everybody know tonight, 25% of all donations will get kicked back to Karen Reed's Defense Fund. The other day, I had about $25 that will go to Karen. So I'm going to add that into tonight if there's any donations. And I like to get to just at least a goal of about $50 for Karen. So if we can do that tonight, we get to a $50 goal. 25% of all your donations will get kicked back to Karen. Right now, I'm going to start it off at 25 for Karen. So that's a carryover from the stream the other night. We can get $25 more for. Great. We'll kick that back. We'll do a $50 donation and go from there. Okay, so let's do this. Let's pull up some cross-examination. I actually missed the cross. I was in and out on it the other day with Maureen Hartnett. So I saw some of it, but I didn't see all of it. But what I want to do first is open it up with, I'm sorry, we'll do Lieutenant O'Hara first, and we'll do the cross by Unetti on Hara. And this essentially where he's going to say that he prefers a secure crime scene. I mean, it would only make sense, right? In a high profile case, but we'll do that. All right, let's start this.
Sir, so you will agree with me that it was Lieutenant Brian Tully who first called you at 2:32 p.m. to ask that your team come out for an evidence search?
That's correct, sir.
And you knew at that time that Lieutenant Tully was he was in charge of the Norfolk County State Police Detectives Unit, correct?
Correct, sir.
Attached to the Norfolk County DA's office, correct?
Correct, sir.
And you also knew Trooper Michael Proctor at that time?
I knew who he is, yes, sir.
And you knew that Trooper Michael Proctor was in the same unit as Lieutenant Tully, correct?
I don't know if I knew he was assigned to that office. I'm not sure where he was assigned, sir.
You've since found out that he is.
Correct, sir.
Now, you told Lieutenant Tully during that phone call at 2:32 p.m. that you would make your team available that day, correct?
Yes, sir.
But at that point in time, Lieutenant Tully specifically held you up, right? Because he didn't have authorization yet?
Objection.
Is that true?
Super chat real quick. Super duper duper $10 super chat from AKA the Cat Lady. $10. So doing great work, Brian. And hashtag free Karen Reed. So we'll take 25% of that. We'll add that to the $25 that we have. Try to get to that $50 goal for Karen tonight. And we'll keep it rolling. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Welcome in, everybody. I appreciate y'all being here. A little impromptu tonight. All right, let's keep rolling through this.
It's not.
Okay. He told you that he did not have the green light, correct?
He had not requested official response from sir at that time.
Okay. So you were not authorized to respond at that time, correct?
No, neither one of us are allowed to dispatch my team. We have to send up formal requests to get authorization to respond.
All right. Now, by 2:32 p.m. on January 29th, when you first spoke to Lieutenant Tully, snow had been falling consistently in Canton since the early hours, correct? The early morning hours?
I would assume so, yes, sir. It was at my house.
I'm sorry?
It was at my house, so I would assume so, yes, sir.
But you lived in Massachusetts at that
Correct,
time, right?
yes, I did, sir.
And you weren't hours away when you were contacted by Lieutenant Tully, correct?
I was not, no.
All right. Now, you were aware that John O'Keefe's body was found on Brian Albert's lawn at 6:03 that night?
I believe when I spoke to Lieutenant Tully, he told me around 6:30.
Okay. Well, let's go with 6:30 then. So when you received the call from Lieutenant Tully, snow would have been accumulated from 6:30 a.m. approximately to approximately 2:30 p.m., correct?
Yes, sir.
And so snow had been accumulating at that point when you first got the call for about 8 hours after the body was found, correct?
Correct, sir.
Now, before you conduct a search, is it important for you to know in general terms the working theory of the police and the investigators in terms of what had happened at the scene?
It's not. I want as detailed information on what we're looking for. As far as the investigation's concerned, that's not interesting to me. I'm not interested in those exact specifics. I just want to know where you would like us to search and what you need us to find.
Right, but in order to know what you are seeking to find.
One thing I find very, very interesting through all of this testimony, and maybe you all can agree with me, as this is getting deeper, and I think the deeper that all these witnesses start to realize that the shit that they're involved in, you notice now that all of these witnesses, even going back to like Jen McCabe, Brian Higgins, Kerry all of them, what is one thing that they've been doing, knowing that this has been leading up to and who we've been waiting to get on the stand? Trooper Proctor. You always notice, like even Jen McCabe's testimony, she distanced herself so much from Proctor. Well, that's what I told him, but that's obviously what he didn't write down, or that's not what I said in that document. I'm telling you, that is advice from their lawyers, because they know this shit is so deep that ultimately what all these people are going to do is just say, well, it wasn't me. And they're going to try to turn this on Proctor. But you notice that in all of her statements, even Jen McCabe said it 100 times during her testimony. Can I look back at what he was said? Can I look back at what was written? Can I look back and see what I said? That's not what I said. Maybe he wrote it down, differently, or that's not what I said when I told him. But they're all distancing themselves now.
You'd need to learn from the investigators what they believed happened that would leave that evidence, correct?
Correct, sir. He told us we were looking for pieces of taillight from a vehicle.
All right. You'd also want to know, prior to getting to the scene, who had access to the scene before you got there, would you not?
I did not need to know that information, no, sir, and I did not ask that.
All right. Is it important to maintain the integrity of a crime scene before it's searched or processed?
Sometimes, but a lot of times when we're involved in searches, we might not be out for days later. If search efforts have been exhausted and they don't think any evidence can be recovered, we will go out to scenes that have been left unsecured for days on end.
Sure. No, I understand that, but that wasn't my question. My question was, is it important to maintain the integrity of a crime scene before it's searched or processed?
No, you can leave it unattended if you don't believe it'll be disturbed or anything will be taken, sir.
Is it preferable to leave a crime scene unattended prior to searching it?
There you go, Lisa.
No, I think they would have searched it before we arrived, yes, sir.
Again, I'm going to ask if you would, please just respond to
what my preference would be, sir, yes, I'd prefer that it was secured.
Okay, that wasn't very difficult.
Apologize on the
Objection, Your Honor.
So no comments, Ms. Giannetti.
Lee, thank you so much for the $10. We'll add that to the total. 25% will get kicked back. Right now, I got $25 in kind of the kitty for Karen Reed, and then we'll keep adding the new donations that come in and just take 25% to that and add that in. That $25 was from a rollover in the other day. I just like to get to like a $50 donation when we get it over there. So if we can reach that goal tonight, it'd be like awesome. She says, thank you, Brian, for all that you do. No, thank you for being here. I appreciate that you're here. That's all that matters, is we keep all these streams rolling and we keep everybody informed. So thank you. All right, let's keep playing on.
At the time that Lieutenant Tully first called you, were you aware that no one from law enforcement was controlling that crime scene?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
I was not aware of that, no, sir.
Were you aware at that time that no one had been controlling it for about 6 or 7 hours before you were called?
I was not aware of that, sir.
Were you aware that the scene had been abandoned by the police and investigators at about 7:50 in the morning?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
I was not aware of that, sir.
Were you aware that the scene was left open to the public for hours before you were asked to search?
I was not aware of that.
All right, in any case, when you got there, there was only one trooper on scene, and that was a trooper from your unit,
Correct, sir.
Beausoleil?
Correct.
Nobody else was guarding the crime scene at that point, correct?
There was not.
In fact, at that point, did you know where specifically on the property you were going to be searching?
I did not.
And in your experience, is it proper procedure in an investigation that requires a search for law enforcement to give up control of the area that will be searched?
It's not unusual for us to respond to scenes like that, sir.
It happens, but is it proper procedure, sir, to give up control of an area to be searched prior to the search?
If they don't think anything will be recovered in the meantime, sir, it's something our searches.
Right. So in this case, is it your testimony then that the investigators didn't think that anything would be recovered?
Objection.
I'll sustain the objection.
All right. Well, you recorded that there was a second alert regarding this case at 2:53 p.m., correct?
That was the initial alert, sir.
Well, maybe we're getting into semantics here, but you were first notified at 2:32 p.m. by Lieutenant Tully, correct?
That's him calling me. The 253 alert is sent out to my full team.
Okay. That 253 alert is the second time that you're receiving information about this case, right? The first being 2:32 from Lieutenant Tully.
No, that's not new information. That's me taking the information I received from Lieutenant Tully and sending it out to the rest of my team because they were not aware of the circumstances yet.
So you were the one to send out that second alert or that alert.
This just comes down to lazy policing and lazy training, and not going through checks and balances, or going through those checks and balances, maybe like a retraining or a certification. It's just laziness. We just found out in the big scandal with the CDL scandal, all of the qualifications that those people were supposed to be having, they were allowing people just to slip through, and they were essentially getting money for it. I mean, look at all the snow blowers, and there was money floating around. That's what happens in these cases, because it just comes to in these organizations, is it comes to, well, I've been here for so long. I mean, I've watched body cam in interviews of like police and talking about proficiency tests when they have to go and actually get certified to shoot their weapon and handle their weapon. And I watched this one. It was a sheriff that was corrupt, and he got called out on a bunch of like spending town money, and they talked about his proficiency test for his keeping his certification for his firearm, and he failed multiple times. But the person that was like his friend in the department that ran the proficiency test like just kept passing him. And this all started because he blew his thumb off when he was responding to a call. So, that's what happens. It just becomes more of the same, more of the routine. I've been here for so long, so they just keep slipping through the cracks. And there should be more mandating and people looking into this a lot more. Their training and their certifications are terrible.
A West Team supervisor, because I was going to start clearing my driveway. So I reached out to a West Team supervisor. He sent out that alert.
And who was that?
That was then Sergeant, now Lieutenant Simpson.
Okay. And the alert that Sergeant Simpson sent out was an instruction for members of your team to begin clearing off their cruisers and their driveways to get ready to go, correct?
That was an availability of alert to see who would be available to respond.
And that they should begin clearing off their cruisers and driveways, correct?
Yes, so they would be able to respond.
All right. But your team.
Just getting this, Steve, thanks for the 5. I appreciate it. We'll add that to the total tonight. Steve says, this case is a magnifying glass on the corruption that the U.S. law enforcement and legal processes. I hope it sparks change. No, I completely agree, man. I completely agree. I think, the thing that's very interesting about this, we live in very, very interesting times. And I would say we live in very interesting times, especially over the last 15 years. Well, when hasn't never really been interesting, but over the last 15 years. And, listen, I'm going to talk a little presidential here, and I know it might upset some people, but I really don't care, because I'm just trying to make the point. You look at Trump, okay? When Trump was elected and Trump got into office, my opinion on everything was he was the person that pulled back the veil to show government what it really was. And they fucking hated him for that, because there was so much corruption going on behind the scenes that all these people were making so much money without him being in office. But the minute he pulled back that veil and showed everybody what actually was going on in government, all their money stopped, and they fucking hated him for that. And then all of a sudden, he had to deal with coronavirus and all that, COVID-19 and all that. And that's why they gave him the hard stop when the next election came around, and miraculously at 2 o'clock in the morning, Joe Biden gets like 50 million votes dumped in, and the next morning Joe Biden's our president now. But things are so fucked up in government, And I truly think Trump was really the first one to go in and pull back that veil and say, hey, this is your government. He started exposing a lot of things. And, I think people became, as much as people say like, oh, I hate Trump. And believe me, there's plenty of things about him that I have an issue with. But the way that I look at it is I think people became more aware and more keen to what was going on. I think they went, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right, or that doesn't look right, or maybe we should look a little bit more into that. I look at like this whole thing with Trump and everything, the charges and all that stuff. Now, Hunter Biden right now is in court for a federal gun charge. Nothing will happen to that guy. Believe me, nothing will happen to that guy. I have no idea what's going to happen to Trump. I don't think he's going to go to prison. It might be some big fine or something, but it remains to be seen. But anyway, I digress. But what I'm essentially saying and getting back to the point is, yes, and it's made me really think a little bit more here too about our local police organizations and our state police and even our government. Is where I instilled so much trust and faith in all of those systems before. I'm starting to kind of wake up a little bit more too and say, hey, things need to be kind of overhauled here. But really, who is the person that's going to go in and overhaul it? Can we really trust those people? So I don't know. It's fucked. We live in crazy times. Again, I didn't want to get super political into this, but I think you're getting my point, is that I hope, and this goes back to the super chat that Steve said, I hope, he says, this case is magnifying glass on the corruption that is in the U.S. law enforcement and legal process. I hope it sparks change. I do too, because it's made me second guess a lot of things. Now, granted, there are great police officers out there. There are great EMS workers. There are great firefighters. Believe me, I tend to believe that a majority of them that do their job want to go in and do their job and help and save people and protect people. That is their job. Some of the most bravest fucking people on this earth were those firefighters that went up into the Twin Towers on 9/11, and God rest their souls, a lot of them lost their lives. Those are brave people. That's something that I probably would never have in me to do. That's a outstanding ability to have that fire inside your belly and think there's people in trouble. I need to go to that threat and get them out. They're trained to do that. Those are some of the most beautiful human beings in the world. I tend to believe that a lot of people are like that in this profession, but there are bad people. There are bad people in every profession. It does happen. Corruption does happen. And hopefully that this case sparks that change when Karen Reed is found not guilty, totally exonerated of all these charges, and walks out of that courtroom a free woman and turns around and starts opening back up and firing back at the corruption. And then really the people that are involved in this really need to be investigated, because it's bad. I mean, I get a better idea of what happened, but I still don't know what happened. But I have my major players in this. I think Jennifer McCabe, Brian Higgins, and Brian Albert. And maybe we could say Colin in there as well, too. But I have my theory on it. I've talked about it. Those, to me, are the three major players. And obviously, Proctor. Proctor is huge in this as well. But I would say the three people in the house that night, those are my three that really need to be looked into. And I would even probably lump Matt McCabe in that as well, too. But those are the three major players to me. All right, let's keep going back here to Cross.
Team was still not activated at that point, correct?
Correct.
In fact, Sergeant Simpson
Nancy,
explicitly wrote in that alert, quote, "We do not have the green light yet," end quote, correct?
Correct, sir.
Sergeant Simpson at 2:53 p.m. in that alert actually typed it in twice that your team did not have the green light, correct?
Correct. It's a voice generator response. It will normally duplicate the instructions. So as I listen to it, if they miss it the first time through, they can hopefully hear it clearly the second time through.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I lean Republican. I mean, it is what it is. I'm going to put that out there. I didn't want to make this a Trump discussion, but the point that I was making was, he was the one that really went into government and pulled that curtain back and said, look, this is what's going on, you know? And that's what needs to happen here. And hopefully, in going back to that super chat from Steve, hopefully this opens up that curtain. It opens up the window and makes people realize in small town America, this can happen to you. This can happen to any single one of you people in this chat right now. That's the bigger point in all of this. That's the bigger point. And this shit needs to stop. And there needs to be multiple checks and balances. And thank God for people like Rita Lombardi that goes out to these select board meetings and screams at these people that are on the board about this audit that is supposed to happen. And they're having these meetings and they're delaying everything. But she's out there and she's crying, the emotion, because that is someone that's very passionate about that is going on in their, what's going on in their town. Corruption. A Boston police officer was murdered, and we need to get to the bottom of it. Okay? Let's stop trying to say that Karen Reed, we're going to make Karen Reed the fall person in all of this. I'm going to throw it on her because she seems like the weakest link. She's not part of the McAlbert clan. She's on the outside. Let's blame it on her. Well, it doesn't work that way. And thank God for people like Rita that get up and scream at those select board meetings and call this shit back in their face and like, let's get on with this. But the reason they don't want to do it is because they don't want to go through those checks and balances, because you're going to find other things that have gone on. I'm telling you, I'm sure money's been buried in all of this. I'm sure there's been handouts, there's been paid outs. That's what you're going to find during all of these audits. And they don't want it. They don't want it. And that's why they keep delaying it. All right, let's go back to testimony here.
And it was very clear that you didn't have the green light from that alert, correct?
Correct, so we weren't authorized to respond yet.
Okay.
Appreciate you.
Now, you stated that you were in Massachusetts at the time you were first contacted, correct?
Yes, sir.
And how far were you from Canton?
Normally would be about a 20-minute ride.
All right. With the blizzard conditions, however, it took you longer than that?
43 minutes, sir.
Now, you're familiar with the CERT Administrative Journal extract?
The Daily Journal, sir?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That recorded, and when I say that, I mean, you called it the Daily Journal?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll call it the Daily Journal. That Daily Journal recorded the initial contact that you had with Lieutenant Tully at 2:32 p.m., correct?
Yes, that was entered into the Daily Journal.
Chris,
And then the second entry was the 2:53 p.m. alert that was sent out by Sergeant Simpson, correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's in the Daily Journal or not, but that would be the alert, sir.
May I approach the witness, please?
Yes.
Let me stop this for a super chat. $20 super chat from Lee. Thank you so much. She says, you're 100% right, Brian. No one wants to get political, but this is politics. You're right. And we can all agree and disagree. We are all here for justice, and we need justice now more than ever. And, and the funny thing is, I remember Aiden saying on one of his streams quite a while back, he said, the Free Karen Reed movement has united so many different people from all walks of life, all different political spectrums. And he says, it's crazy. He goes, I have Republicans that come up to me. I have Democrats that come up to me. I have independents that come up to me. I have black, white, Asian, whatever. They all come up to me and say, thank you for everything that you have done. Thank you for putting this out there and getting in everybody's face. And that's kind of like the bigger point that I was trying to make in all of this is that, and going back to that super chat, it's a great point to make. Hopefully this sparks change. And this sparks change here in my state of Massachusetts, and it sparks change in all of our local municipalities, and hopefully it sparks change in the Massachusetts State Police, because we are finding there are a lot of things that were not checked and balanced in the Massachusetts State Police, and maybe we do need an overhaul or some new regulations and checks and balances. Who can we have step in to trust to do that? Have no idea. That's not my decision, but we all have the power to vote and make all of that happen. So we'll keep rolling here.
Your Honor, I'd like to hand the witness this document and leave it there. I have an extra copy. I have no problem with him referring to it.
You're right, Captain.
Once you've had a chance to review that, Lieutenant, if you look up at me when you're done.
All set, sir.
So you'd agree with me that the 2:32 p.m. phone call with Lieutenant Tully is in the Daily Journal, correct?
Yes, it is.
And the 2:53 p.m. alert by Sergeant Simpson is also in the journal, correct?
Yes, it is.
Both of those have a timestamp, do they not?
They do, sir.
What is the next entry on that journal?
It says, "Cert activated en route to Canton."
Now, there is no time entry next to that. I'm sorry, no time is entered next to that entry, correct?
There is not, no.
The previous alert said only to clear the vehicles and driveways, essentially, right? To check on availability.
Correct, sir.
So the time that your team is alerted was entered in the journal, but there is no time entered in this journal as to when you were dispatched, correct?
Correct, sir.
But you have a memory of after that 2:53 p.m. alert sent out by Sergeant Simpson that Lieutenant Tully called you back about an hour later?
It's not a memory, sir. Our alert for the team to respond is timestamped at 3:48 p.m.
Okay. And
Sue, real quick, 5 pounds. 5 pounds over the pond. Thank you. Says Sue, yes, but even if Karen Reed is not convicted, what do you think the corrupt, powerful people who protect Brian Albert and the McMabe Mafia will do? Too widespread and it's scary. No, it is. It's scary. It's scary. You know, and who knows what's going to happen? We don't know what's going to happen. We would love people to be taken out in handcuffs. You know, I felt like Brian Higgins basically admitted on the stand the other day he broke federal laws. Why is he not being held and charged with that? It remains to be seen. South Africa checking in. Thank you.
And that was Sergeant Simpson that recorded that, correct?
Correct, sir.
But that's not in the Daily Journal, correct?
No, that's in the Health and Homeland Alert Network, which records all our alerts that get sent out. And that was timestamped at 3:48.
3:48. Okay. Now, other than authorization,
scary. I don't drive through
it's
Canton.
been obtained
Screw
after
that.
the 2:53 p.m. alert. Did you ever ascertain what else changed on the part of the Norfolk State Police Detective Unit that allowed you now to have the green light?
Once I was done cleaning my driveway off, which took a significant amount of time, I spoke to my captain. He said we were approved through our chain of command. And that's when either I contacted Lieutenant Tully or he called me. He said he was approved through his chain of command to include the deputy superintendent who was authorizing a response.
Okay,
So there's several layers of the chain of command that have to approve a response for numerous reasons. Staffing reasons, they know I'm going to be pulling, again, I said some of my team members aren't full-time members. Some of them I have to pull off their assignments. So if they're on patrol, I'll now be shorting a barracks. They take that into consideration, overtime consideration, safety consideration of now additional members driving through, so whether to respond. So that all gets discussed at levels above us.
all right. That answer applied to strictly issues regarding authorization on both ends, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. You recall my question, which was, other than authorization, did you learn what, if anything, had changed in that time period from 2:53 p.m. to 3:48 p.m. on the part of the Norfolk State Police Detective Unit?
No, sir. We just talked about the authorization process.
Sometime shortly before 4 o'clock, you're talking about 3:48 being the alert authorizing you to depart. Sometime before 4, Sergeant Simpson informed your team to start heading to Canton and to report to you, correct?
Correct, sir.
That meant that team members should basically stop what they're doing. The ones who
Mary,
are going
thank you
to
for
be
the
going,
$10 on
get their gear
PayPal.
ready,
Appreciate that.
suit up,
Plus
get in a
10.
car, and start driving to Canton to meet up with you, correct?
Correct, sir.
And we've already discussed that on this particular day with blizzard conditions and the roads as they existed, that would obviously take more time than it would on a clear sunny day, correct?
Correct, sir.
And I believe your estimation is maybe about a 20-minute drive in good weather with good roads versus the 43 minutes it actually took you to get there, correct?
Correct.
Now, the 7 members of your team who did show up were Bearden, Beausoleil, Carrier, Louise, O'Brien, you, and Viscardi, correct?
Correct, sir.
you all arrived at about the same time, sir?
No, we had a pretty significant difference between arrival times.
Okay. Is there something called a personnel status report that records arrival time?
That essentially right there is telling you that the scene was never secure. All those troopers arriving at the different times is showing you right now that scene was never secure, and that's essentially what Yannetti is going to get out of him towards the end of his testimony here. $5 from Sue. This is not a red versus blue political conflict. I hope it won't be hijacked by either party. Corruption is a national problem. Absolutely right. And again, I just wanted to bring up, I said the T word, but I wanted to make an example of that. And I really think that that's something that, Trump did. Let's see this. Kristen, thank you so much for the 20. She said, just keep going. Yes, I agree. Just keep going. Add 20, please.
I'm sir.
No, it doesn't record arrival times. We just enter who's responding. We use our geotab, which is our vehicle locator, to determine arrival times.
Is it your testimony? I'll sit back.
Right, Joe. Yeah.
Is it your testimony that the personnel status report does not record the date and time that somebody arrived on scene?
No, that's all manually entered, sir.
Do you deny that the personnel status report in this case recorded the date and time of each of those officers that I just mentioned who came on scene?
Yes, Al, tomorrow.
It has who arrived on scene, yes, sir.
But it doesn't just say who arrived on scene. The personnel status report says when they arrived on scene, correct?
Yes, whenever they would have been entered into the system. But that doesn't mean they were officially on scene yet, sir.
But again, that's not what the document says, right? It doesn't say we're entering this into the system because they're arriving. The document says on scene and it gives a date and time, does it not?
Yes, it does, sir.
All right. Now, your testimony is, oh, and by the way, the personnel status report, you'd agree with me, has everybody except for you and Beausoleil showing up at 5 p.m. on January 29th of 2022, does it not?
Yes, it does, sir.
And it has you and Beausoleil showing up 5 minutes before that at 4:55 p.m. on January 29th, correct?
Correct.
But it's your testimony that when you got there, it was just you and Beausoleil, correct?
Correct, sir.
Which actually would be consistent with the personnel status report, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yes, sir.
Because that has you two showing up first as well, right?
Yes, sir.
And then your testimony is that other members didn't show up until between 5:20 and 5:24 p.m.
Trooper Bearden arrived at 5:21. Sergeant Luis and Sergeant O'Brien arrived at 5:24. Trooper Viscardi showed up at 5:34. Sergeant Carrier showed up at 5:41.
Okay, and so the last member of your team, which is, again, Carrier?
Carrier, correct, sir, 5:41.
He showed up at 5:41 and now your team was all there, correct?
Yes, sir.
So is it your testimony that you did not meet up as a team
Yo mama.
somewhere
Love
and
that
head to
name. Yo
34th
mama.
Avenue? You all arrived individually.
That's correct, sir.
Did every single trooper who arrived have their own cruiser?
Yes, they did, sir.
All right. Now, you would agree with me that when Lieutenant Tully first contacted you at 2:32 p.m., it was still daytime, correct?
Love
Yes,
that.
it was.
So it was light out, correct?
Yes, sir.
You'd agree with me that at around 5 o'clock on this late January day in Massachusetts, it was dark out by the time you got there, correct?
Yes, it was.
So when you finally arrived on scene, after getting the team getting the green light, it was dark for the start of your search, correct?
Yes, it was.
When you got there, you set up a command post.
Well, you could call my cruiser command post, sure, sir.
Well, I didn't use the term command post, sir, did I?
You did not.
Who used it first?
We marked my cruiser as a command post on the map, sir.
Okay, all right. And a command post is a base of operations at the scene, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you parked your cruiser basically in front of the driveway at 34 Fairview to serve as the command post?
JD,
Yes,
thank you for the
right,
five.
right side of the driveway, yes, sir.
Thank you.
And you were initially facing away from the flagpole when you did that,
Yes, sir.
which would mean that your cruiser was parked technically on the wrong side of the street facing Cedar Crest because you were against 34 Fairview,
Correct, sir.
and then ultimately turned it around?
Well, yes, myself and Trooper Beausoleil moved our vehicles.
All right, and you initially parked there in part because you wanted to keep the area where you were searching clear of vehicles, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was where you met at the, we'll call it a command post because you did, your cruiser. That was where you met to discuss the parameters of the search?
When Detective Lieutenant Tully arrived on scene, that's where we spoke.
Okay. And you would agree with me that it was Lieutenant Tully from the Norfolk State Police Detectives Unit who told you where to look and what to look for, correct?
Correct. He told us the area he thought would be the best.
Yeah, Scott, we got him on the hot mic, remember? Jesus Christ. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Yeah. He's in over his head. I mean, he knows he's lost this case. There's no energy from that man. There's no energy from that man. The hot mic. And he gets scolded all day from Judge Bev, and I'm going to play a little bit of that here in a second. But I mean, essentially what we're getting here is that crime scene wasn't secure.
Probability to find what we were looking for.
In addition to your
Miss Krampus checking in. 1 year. 1 year. Look at this. 12-month member. 12-month member. I hit the bell. Haven't done that in a while. 12-month member. 1 year. 1 year. Look at this. 1 year. Been on the channel supporting for a year. Thank you so much, Miss Krampus. I remember you back in the Idaho days. And believe me, we will get back to Idaho. But this right now has been just encompassing everything in my local area. But says, glad to see you grow and stay true to you. Thank you so much. And that's one thing that I have always done here on this channel is I've always stayed true to who I am. I do not change. I have not changed as my subs have grown. This is it. This is what you get. Loud and in charge. That's what you get. Loud. I'm going to be loud. I'm going to be screaming. And that's who I am. But thank you, Miss Krampus. 1 year. Come on, everybody. Let's celebrate and say congratulations to Miss Krampus. One year channel membership. Thank you. 12. That's awesome. Thank you. Good to see you, by the way.
team,
I know exactly who
the
you
seven
are.
of you, you noted that there were 5 other officers on scene at various points, correct?
Yeah, I believe it was about 5, sir.
They were all in uniform?
They were not.
Crystal,
Someone in
thank you
plain
for
clothes?
becoming a new
They were.
member.
And you didn't know who those 5 other officers were, correct?
I only recognize 2 of them, sir.
And so the other 3, you didn't know if they were state police or Canton police?
Correct, sir.
At that point, were you made aware that the Canton police had been conflicted out of this investigation?
I had not, no, sir.
All right. Now, Lieutenant Tully directed you to an area where he said that John O'Keefe's body was found, correct?
He directed us to where he believed the vehicle involved had been parked and to where the victim's body was recovered.
All right. So again, in answer to my question, he did direct you to an area where he believed the victim's body was found, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he told you that he believed that the victim officer was hit and dragged by a motor vehicle, correct?
Yeah, I believe he might have said possibly dragged.
All right. But in terms of your paperwork on the case, there's something called a final mission report, correct?
Yes, there is, sir.
And what is the final mission report?
That's just a brief summary of the actions conducted by CERT during our assignment.
And with regard to, just going back for a second, with regard to those 5 officers, you mentioned that you recognized 2 of the 5 officers that were in plainclothes at the scene?
Correct, sir.
And what?
Real quick, Feeling Froggy says, not only do you donate every stream, but you do so without taking YouTube deductions into account. Respect. Integrity will always count on top. You know, and the thing is like, I don't care about the money. I don't care about the money. I just want to be able to do something to donate back to Karen. I felt because, listen, let's face it, and this is just me talking right now. There's a lot of people watching these streams, and there's a lot of money coming in. And I just felt like, look, you know, I personally myself, I felt weird sitting here and not being able to do something. So what can I do? Well, I can donate back. You know, I'll kick back some money. And a lot of people don't realize I got to pay taxes on all that money too. And YouTube takes a lot of stuff from us. I don't care about that. All I cared was about kicking back something to Karen. And I said during the trial, if I had these streams, that is something personally I am doing. I don't care what anybody else is doing. That's something that I took on and I wanted to do for Karen. That's it. That's my part. That's my part in all of this. And I listen, I appreciate y'all recognizing that. But everybody contributes in their own way. And I support any single person that has a platform, that does those standouts, that goes out and stands out in the freezing. I mean, all through the winter, there were standouts. Those are people that are doing it in their own way to contribute and give back. But my thing is, if I can help donate some money and give back and fight back against this corruption and get Karen Reed exonerated and free from all these charges, so the poor fucking woman can just go on with her life, finally grieve and go through it, and finally, be able to digest, her brain. Her brain has been going nonstop for almost 2.5 fucking years now, and I'm sure, she's through a lot of stress. It's financially going to be very expensive for her, but when she's exonerated and free of all these charges, Canton's going to have probably a big lawsuit against them. I would hope. But going back to my point here, thank you. I don't do this for clout. I don't do it for anything. I just do it because I'm a giver. I love to help people. And if I can help out and do something to kick it back, then why not? Right? Why not? Okay. Anyway, let's get through this. How about we do this? I think we've got the point on this testimony. I want to actually read on I want to go to the cross on Maureen Hartnett. I mean, we could sit here for another 10 minutes. I think it's going to be pretty much where we know the conclusion of this testimony. But let's get to Maureen Hartnett. We want to talk about the broken taillight pieces that were basically draped on the back bumper. She is the one that found the apparent hair that was actually positioned and moved in photographs that Alan Jackson was showing. I was like, holy shit, like, look at that. And then we heard about clothing, which I put a tweet up when they showed the clothing of John O'Keefe, and we saw essentially what I looked at and I saw was dog bite marks. I compared it to another piece of evidence that was used in a case of a dog attack, and I can pull that up and show that to you all, and it's pretty startling. But let's get to Maureen Hartnett. And what I first want to do is play the video of Lally essentially trying to explain her improficiencies and trying to explain that away. And I found that actually kind of funny and ironic, but let's play through some of this here. Right off the bat, he had to explain, like, you could not, essentially, she could not pass her proficiency test. Her boss had to actually step in and test her multiple times before she could pass. And I think it's funny that they get right into that right away. And I already knew right when they were getting into that, I said, oh boy, this witness is in a lot of trouble. The credibility is just going to go down the drain. Oh, I can't wait to be in court. It's going to be great.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Maureen Hartnett, Hartnett.
All right, Ms. Hartnett, I know I'm going to ask you throughout this to keep your voice up, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And Ms. Hartnett, what do you do for work?
I'm a forensic scientist too with the
My God.
Criminalistics Unit and Crime Scene Response Unit at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory.
And how long in total have you been with the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab?
In total, approximately 8 years.
And I'm going to ask you some questions just a little bit about your educational background. Where did you go as far as your undergraduate was concerned?
I have a Bachelor of Science in Biology from Bridgewater State University.
And following receipt of that degree, where did you go from there?
I have a Master of Science in Forensic Science from the University of New Haven.
And after you received your master's, where did you go after that?
I was then hired by the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory.
No, I want to play this
And
because
when you're
I want everybody to hear this is when he tried to explain her improficiencies. I mean, like, literally, when they get past all the credentials here, he's like, well, can we talk about when you couldn't pass your proficiency exams and what you had to do to actually recalibrate yourself and like recertify yourself? Literally, your boss had to step in multiple times. And I already knew right there, I was like, oh boy, this witness is going to have a lot of problems.
Initially hired, you mentioned that you're a forensic scientist too now, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
So when you're initially hired, or when you were initially hired at the State Crime Lab, what was your position and
Thank you,
what did that
PB&J, for the $9.99.
Are you referring to back in 2004 or in my current hire?
You're back in 2000.
In 2004, I was originally hired as a temporary employee in the CODIS unit.
And what is it that you did there?
I collected blood samples for the DNA database.
That's scary.
And did you receive any sort of training in regard to that work?
Yes, I was trained on how to properly collect and seal those samples.
And what did training sort of consist of in reference to that?
I demonstrated being able to take those collections and then properly store them and seal them.
Now, your current position, what is your position at the crime lab now?
Currently, I'm a forensic scientist 2 in the criminalistics unit and crime scene response units.
And what is sort of the difference between a forensic scientist 2 versus a forensic scientist 1?
A forensic scientist 1 is still in training at the crime lab.
Thank you for the
And
$9.99. Love your
did
channel.
you start
Love
as a
what you
forensic
do.
scientist
Thank
1
you.
when you came into this particular unit?
Yes, I did.
And about how long a period or process is it from the time that you start as a forensic scientist 1 before you become a forensic scientist?
It took me approximately 9 to 10 months to be signed off to be a forensic scientist 2.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what goes on as far as that process is concerned, going from a forensic scientist 1 to a forensic scientist 2?
During that time period, we are being trained in the various types of analysis that we'll perform in the criminalistics unit.
And what exactly does that training sort of consist of?
The training is broken up into modules, which addresses each type of analysis. At the end of each module, we take a written exam, an oral exam, and a hand-on practical exam. Once each module is successfully completed, we'll move on to the next module.
And you couldn't pass them.
And what are your duties as a forensic scientist in the criminalistics unit and the crime scene response?
In the criminalistics unit, I examine items of evidence submitted by law enforcement personnel or crime scene responders for the presence of biological fluids such as blood, semen, and saliva, as well as trace materials such as hairs and fibers. I also perform gunshot residue collection and damage analysis.
And with respect to the crime scene response unit?
For the crime scene response unit, I respond to crime scenes. I document crime scenes, analyze or test evidence, preserve the evidence, and then transport that evidence back to the crime lab.
And now, with reference to your training experience, specifically in the crime scene response unit, what is, based on your training experience, what is sort of the definition of what is a crime scene?
Thank
A
you.
crime scene is any location that may contain evidence related to a crime.
Now, with regard to those 2 positions, what, if any, training did you receive in regard to those 2 units that you're currently in while you were at the lab?
I'm sorry, are you speaking about the crime scene training specifically?
Crime scene training.
that I couldn't pass?
Yes. Let me ask you first, start with the criminalistics.
The criminalistics training, I completed modules on body fluid identification, such as blood and semen, trace analysis, identification of hairs and fibers, pattern evidence, such as blood stain pattern evidence, as well as damage analysis.
And as far as the training was concerned with regard to the crime scene response?
I received training in proper documentation using sketches and diagrams of the scene. I also received training in trace collection at crime scenes, as well as gunshot residue collection at crime scenes.
Now, the crime lab that you work for, is that lab accredited?
Yes, it is.
And what does that, as far as accreditation, what does that mean?
Accreditation is a voluntary quality assurance process that the laboratory is a part of, or an outside body evaluates our crime lab to ensure that our personnel, procedures, and instruments are held to certain scientific standards.
And the outside sort of vendor or the outside accrediting agency, who is that in regard to the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab?
Our laboratory is accredited by ANAB, which stands for
He's trying to
ANSI
build
National
for
Accreditation Board, and
Trying to build
ANSI
for
is
credibility.
another acronym that stands for American National Standards Institute.
And as far as that accreditation is concerned, how often is that something that that your lab undergoes, or is there a certain audit process?
And then
How is
it's
that,
just going to
how
fall.
is accreditation sort of achieved?
We are audited, I believe, I want to say every 2 years, but I'm not 100% sure. They come out to the lab and they go through certain systems or have a certain scope in which they audit us. We also do internal audits as well.
And as far as that accreditation is concerned, is that something that was up to date in the month of January of 2022?
Yes, it was.
And is it up to date currently as well?
Yes.
Now, your work, I believe you just alluded to this as far as your testimony, but
Look at this, $10 Aussie. Thank you so much. John checking in says, thank you for all that you do and others in this movement are doing, Brian. Much love from Tasmania. Come to Tasmania. Remember that? Come to Tasmania. Come to Tasmania. Tasmanian devil. Remember that? All right, mate.
does
Thank
your
you
work
for
go
the 10.
through some sort of review process?
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Yes, every assignment that I complete goes through both a technical review process and an administrative review process.
Can you explain a little bit about what each of those is and what it means?
A technical review process is done by an independent analyst, either a peer or a supervisor, who will look through my file and determine whether or not they can come to the same conclusions that I came to based on my notes.
Uh-oh.
Are you familiar, based on your training and experience within the lab, of something called a proficiency test?
Yes, I am.
And can you explain to the jury what is your understanding? What is a proficiency?
That you couldn't pass.
Proficiency tests are given in the different types of analysis that we do at the lab to ensure that we are maintaining our competency in that type of analysis.
And about how often are these administered, or how often do you take proficiency tests?
For biological fluid identification,
Oh, yeah, and I want to say this real quick. Scott, great point. She says on direct, she says she swabbed the 6 cups, but on cross, she said she only swabbed 1. Interesting.
and I take 2 per year. For trace identification,
That's
I
not
take
very
1 per year.
proficient.
And for crime scene response, I take 1 per year.
And these proficiency tests, are they required by the accrediting body, ANAB, that you were referring to?
Yes, they are.
And did you take a proficiency test in hair and fiber identification in 2022?
Failed.
Yes, I did.
And what was the outcome of that proficiency test?
That was successfully completed and required a remediation.
Can you explain to the jury what remediation is and why this specific proficiency test required remediation?
A remediation occurs when you have an inconsistent answer with that is expected by the laboratory or by the test provider. In this particular instance, I had an inconsistent answer with the expected laboratory result.
Why would you even put this witness on the stand? Why would you even put this? You've just discredited this witness. You've just discredited her work. She can complete it. Yeah, I was just going to say, she can complete it, but she fails. So I wanted to play this, and then we're going to get into the cross. She can complete it, but she fails.
And how was the remediation completed in this instance?
After the inconsistent answer was identified by my technical leader, we had a verbal discussion about why I came to the conclusion I did. To be more specific, each item had 2 samples. One of the samples for item 4, I determined as being a human hair without a root, when in fact the root was present. We had a discussion on how I came to that conclusion, and then she mounted that hair back on the microscope, and we discussed different ways that I could have come to the correct conclusion.
So she can't identify hairs with a root and hairs without a root. That's why she didn't pass. And then there was a discussion with her boss, her supervisor. So her hair analysis of the hair on the back of Karen Reed's vehicle, in my mind, is going to be 100% discredited. All right. Anyway, I wanted to get this point in. We'll play a little bit more here, but I want to get to to Alan Jackson's cross.
And during that remediation process, were you permitted to continue to perform casework during that time?
Yes, I was. I was committed
That's
to.
scary.
I was permitted.
She was during the remediation, the clarification, the recertification in her training, she was still allowed to perform on cases. That is scary stuff, folks.
To continue to perform casework in hair and fiber identification. However, I was temporarily asked to not perform technical reviews of my peers' work on hair and fiber identification.
Yeah, you think? This is a horrible witness for the Commonwealth. Holy smokes.
And was prior casework that you had completed, evaluated to verify that the previous reports were issued correctly?
Yes, they were.
And what was the determination in regard to that?
No previous casework was affected by this error.
And have you since completed additional proficiency tests in hair and fiber identification?
Yes, I did.
And what were the outcomes of those subsequent
Finally.
proficiency tests?
Those were successfully completed without needing any additional remediation.
As far as the remediation was concerned, if you could just explain to the jury sort of what the issue was and what that remediation process looked like again.
Sure. So I received 4 items in hair and fiber identification. Each item was told that they came from the same source. Item number 4 consisted of 2 items. One was a hair with a root. The other was also a human hair with a root, but I had said the root was absent. That was due to the fact that I didn't see anything like that under the microscope. It was something that was new to me. My technical leader reviewed that hair with me under the microscope. She showed me various characteristics such as the loss of scale pattern and the soft appearance of the root, which I thought was damage. Because we had this discussion and I agreed with the different characteristics that she showed me, she then gave me several hairs, both with damage and with roots, so that I could basically continue to understand the difference of what I was looking at. Once she looked at all my notes and agreed with everything that I had done, she then issued me an additional test to demonstrate my continued competency in this.
Now, how many criminalistics cases have you processed over your time at the lab?
Over 1,000.
That's pretty scary. Over 1,000. And she couldn't properly identify hair. And guess what is one of the pieces of evidence that she finds? Or the piece of evidence that they say that is part of this case that she finds on the back of Karen Reed's SUV is hair. Or what we think is a hair, an apparent hair. We don't know whose hair it is. But I find it hard pressed to believe that if they're going to turn around and say that's John O'Keefe's hair, how the hell did that make it all the way back on a flatbed in a blizzard, 30 minutes, 30 miles, whatever you want to say, from Dighton to Canton, offloaded on a flatbed and then moved into a Sallyport? Gee, I wonder when that hair got there, because Alan Jackson's going to point it out during cross and say, why did the hair change position? All right, let's get to cross. But first, let's hear Bev scold Lally in the court.
Another sort of sticker or placard that you place in that area?
Yes, I do.
And what, if anything, is that in reference to?
I'm sorry, I can't see what the letter is on it, so I'm not sure what that's in reference to.
If I could ask Ms. Gilman.
So, Mr. Lally, when you put your head down to read, your voice goes down considerably. We can't get a recording of your voice, so you need to speak up.
Understood. Ms. Gilman.
And that happened about 40 times during the trial, during the testimony. All right, let's get to Alan Jackson Cross and essentially shred Maureen Hartnett. Let's go.
Ms. Hartnett, you responded to Canton Police Department. A lot of your testimony was about what happened in the Sallyport, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Susan, thank you so much for the 20 on Cash. I think it's through Cash App. 25 on Cash App. Susan says, I love the show. Well, I love you being here. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. We'll add that to the total. Add that to the total, and we'll kick back 25% tonight to Karen Reed. All right, let's go.
You
Alan
were asked
Jackson.
if you responded to the Canton Police Department on February 2nd, and most of your testimony was predicated on that date, you going over there and doing some visual observations, as well as some removal of items and some other testing, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Was it February 2nd or was it February 1st?
May I check my notes?
I'd appreciate it if you did this.
My apologies, that was my error. It was February 1st.
Okay. So everything that you testified to, you only went once.
Yes, that's correct.
So everything that you testified to having taken place on February 1st, we should assume it was actually on February 2nd, we should assume it was actually February 1st, the one time you were there.
Yes, I was there one time.
Okay. Were you dispatched to the Sally Port? And I apologize, I'm not yelling at you. I'm trying to keep my voice elevated, so just so you know.
Understood.
It's not my normal speaking voice.
Jackson.
You were dispatched at the behest of one of the Massachusetts State Troopers, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
The Detective Bureau specifically, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Trooper Proctor more specifically, correct?
I can't believe I sit here and I'm looking and I'm like, I cannot believe that I'm going to be able to sit in that courtroom and watch these attorneys work. These three masterful attorneys. I'm going to be that close to Jackson. I'm going to be that close to Yannetti. I'm going to be that close to Little. I'm going to be that close to looking at the jury and seeing them for the first time and seeing their reactions. How are they reacting to testimony? What is their vibe? It's an absolute complete honor. I mean, to be able to do this. Absolute complete honor. I can't wait. I can't wait. It's going to be something I've never been able to experience in my life. I've sat in one hearing. I got into the courtroom and it was packed, and that was up in the bigger courtroom. But to sit in here and be that close to these attorneys and watch them work is a complete honor. Is an honor to sit there. All right, let's play through this.
Yes, that's correct.
And Trooper Proctor, you knew at that time to be the lead detective, the person that was in control of the investigation.
May I check my notes who I wrote down as the lead investigator at that
If it
time?
would refresh your recollection, sure. With the court's permission.
Yes.
Let's double time this up a little bit.
Yes, I was told on scene that Trooper Proctor was in charge of the investigation.
All
I'll be there
Now,
on
while
Thursday.
you were there, one of the things that you did initially was to just do an overview of the vehicle, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Obviously, that was important given the limited information that you had at that time about a potential motor vehicle pedestrian incident, correct?
Correct.
So you were looking for anything that would rise to a level of investigative concern regarding that vehicle, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Hence your review and notation of certain scratches on the vehicle. Is that right?
Yes.
Which may or may not have anything to do with the incident, but you noted it anyway, correct?
I did not draw any conclusions as to where those scratches came from.
Okay, you just took the words right out of my mouth. My next question, the dent that you noted and photographed, you made no conclusion that that occurred as a result of a motor vehicle pedestrian incident, correct?
Yes, Scott
That's
got to
correct.
sit in.
The scratches, and I'm just going to go through a couple of them. The scratches that you denoted and had photographed, you made no conclusions about that having anything to do with a motor vehicle pedestrian incident, correct?
That's correct.
Even the broken taillight. At that point, you made no conclusions or drew no scientific conclusions about that having anything at all to do with a motor vehicle pedestrian incident, correct?
Nakia, thank you so much. She says, thank you for supporting Karen Reed's legal fund. Interested to hear your thoughts after you see the jury. Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you, you're all going to want to come back on Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Listen, I know the Celtics are playing, but you're not going to want to miss this show. I'm going to have Jess Machado for her first time for a weekly update. And she's going to come on once a week with me and do weekly updates because she is in the courtroom. And thank you, Jess, if you're watching, for doing that. I know you're extremely swamped right now. And Tom CPU will be with us on that night. I wanted to have Tom in as a live guest, but my air conditioning is not running in my studio right now, and it's super hot up there, and I'm not going to put him through that misery because I can barely stand it right now. But hopefully that gets squared up by the end of this week. And next week, I can get him back and have him in studio. So he will join us virtually. All right, let's keep going.
That's correct.
You did, however, look for tissue, human tissue, blood, biological material, and things of that nature on the car itself. Did you not?
Yes, I did.
In that review, I think you testified that you saw nothing that suggested the transfer of human tissue to the vehicle, correct?
I did not see any visible stains or tissue on the vehicle.
You were told, Ms. Hartnett, that there were scratches.
Now that's interesting. she did not see any biological material. Let me go back and hear that again. I'm going to ask the question from Jackson.
I'd appreciate it if you did this.
Let's see what he said again. I think I went back a little too far.
While you were there, one of the things that you did initially was to just do an overview of the vehicle, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Obviously, that was important given the limited information that you had at that time about a potential motor vehicle pedestrian incident, correct?
Correct.
So you were looking for anything that would rise to a level of investigative concern regarding that vehicle, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Hence your review and notation of certain scratches on the vehicle. Is that right?
Yes.
Which may or may not have anything to do with the incident, but you noted it anyway, correct?
I did
thank
not
you,
draw any
Little.
conclusions as to where those scratches came from.
Okay, you just took the words right out of my mouth. My next question, the dent that
Thanks,
you
Scott.
noted and photographed, you made no conclusion that that occurred as a result of a motor vehicle pedestrian incident, correct?
That's correct.
The scratches, and I'm just going to go through a couple of them. The scratches that you denoted and had photographed, you made no conclusions about that having anything to do with a motor vehicle pedestrian incident, correct?
That's correct.
Even the broken taillight, at that point, you made no conclusions or drew no scientific conclusions about that having anything at all to do with a motor vehicle pedestrian incident, correct?
That's correct.
You did, however, look for tissue, human tissue, blood, biological material, and things of that nature on the car itself. Did you not?
Yes, I did.
In that
See, now that would make sense, because if there's an accident and someone is hit, like they're claiming, like the Commonwealth is claiming that Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe, and let's just say, the theory is she hit him in the head, which I still can't fucking put all this together, how they think this. So let's just say they hit him in the head. Well, what's going to happen is when you're hit, and you've seen this in crime scene investigations, like when someone's cut and there's an impact to someone, you get splatter. You get a blood splatter. You might get DNA that comes off that body and hits a particular surface, and they would swab for that. They would do a biological swab for that. She's saying in a report she didn't see any of that. So that really locks up the fact by her reporting that there was no impact into a human being from that vehicle. If I'm understanding this correctly, if you're getting what I'm saying here, if you're putting the pieces together, that's how I'm kind of understanding all of this. Going back to this real quick, Mark Betterl, I'm going to have him on at some point. I'm going to ask him to come on. And I know Mark's been kind of doing the rounds right now. He's very busy, but I'd love to have him come back when the defense starts their case. That's kind of my thought and theory and all of that. So anyway, let's keep playing through this.
I think you testified that you saw nothing that suggested the transfer of human tissue to the vehicle, correct?
I did not see any visible
There you
stains
go.
or tissue on the vehicle.
Bam.
You were told, Ms. Hartnett, that there were scratches on one of the extremities of John O'Keefe, correct?
That's correct.
Were you shown a photograph of those scratches to assist you in your visual review or examination of that vehicle?
Not at that time, no.
To this date, have you seen a photograph of his arm and the injuries to his arm?
Yes, I have.
And another great attorney that I've had on my channel, and I've built a very nice relationship with this person off YouTube. And I have to say, Melanie Little, great person. We've built a great relationship here on and off YouTube. I call her a friend, someone I can call. I respect her. And anytime that she comes over and has conversations on my channel, I always feel honored. So, let's not forget about Melanie too. Melanie's great. I love just her rawness and her humor, her dry humor. She's just really great and does a great job. And Mark is fantastic as well. I know Mark is very busy on a lot of shows now. All right, let's keep playing through here.
Your Honor, if I may.
I love Melanie. She's great.
Could I display for the jurors and for Ms. Hartnett Exhibit 19?
Is this the one that's
The arm
covered a bit?
has been
Okay,
cropped.
yes.
Your Honor.
Excuse me, I'm tired.
specifically?
Great. Good. Mark is great. He was great the other night on that live. Me TV, the glare. Oh, that was such a good live. 8,000 people tuned into that. Unbelievable. We have Bev on.
Ms. Hartnett, do you recognize what's depicted in Exhibit 19?
Yes, I do.
And you've seen that pattern of scratches previously, correct?
Yes, I've seen a photo.
So
I'm going to skip ahead because YouTube just don't like that photo.
to label those solo cuts, correct?
No, I did not label them.
Did you, how did you take those swabs? Was the swab done in one solo cup, or did you take a swab from all 6, or how did you take those swabs that
Okay.
you ultimately did take?
This is interesting. She says here, I only took a swab from 1 cup, but earlier, and I love how Jackson gets this in there. Did you take it from 6 cups, or what did you take it from? And she says 1 cup now, but earlier on cross, she said 6. Let me just back up a little bit.
On the car, all came back negative for human tissue, et
There you
cetera.
go. So,
The testing that I did on scene from the various areas of the undercarriage, which I had mentioned before, the tire flaps, the edge of the bumper, and the exhaust pipe screened negative for blood.
Okay, Mr. Jackson, can we take this down?
So just
so if someone was hit by that car, if John O'Keefe was hit by that car, there should be blood, there should be tissue, there should be a sample deposited onto that car. Now, there's none of that. There's none of that.
going to suggest that. Thank you, Your Honor. On February 1st, 2002,
But people argue and go, oh, well, the hair was there and the glass was there. All right, so let's go back and say it was, and they would go, well, of course it wouldn't be there. The ice and the water would wash it away when it was towed. Okay, so let's just say it would, but why is magically glass laying on top of the bumper and then we have a hair that's affixed to the back of the car? Snow and ice wouldn't wash that off after a 30-mile drive from Dighton to Canton? You got to be fucking crazy. You got to be crazy. Believe me, they call us crazy. I get emails. I'm crazy. I got one guy that just emails me every single day. I know you're watching the show. And you absolutely disdain and you hate me now. We used to conversate for 15 years at the gym. I still think you're a really good guy, but you write me like nasty emails all the time that, it's the case is going to blow up. The real evidence is going to come out. Look at, man, listen, I respect law enforcement. I respect EMS workers. I respect all of that profession. There are bad people in that profession. But it just gets like annoying, it's annoying. I think you're a good guy, but I wish you'd wake up a little bit. Anyway, let's keep
in
playing
addition to taking some swabs from the vehicle itself, you also mentioned that you took swabs of what you believe to be blood evidence contained in 6 solo cups, correct?
Yes, I noted those as frozen red-brown stains in red cups.
Were those solo cups in any way labeled among themselves? In other words, solo cup 1, 2, 3, 4.
I don't believe they were, but I don't have a photograph of that, so I'm not 100% sure.
You did not thereafter label those solo cups. If they hadn't been done beforehand, you did not undertake that to label those solo cups, correct?
No, I did not label them.
Did you, how did you take those swabs? Was the swab done in one solo cup, or did you take a swab from all 6, or how did you take those swabs that you ultimately did take?
I took those swabs from one solo cup.
How did you choose which of the 6 solo cups you were going to take a swab from?
I don't recall exactly how I chose which cup. It was reported to me that those cups came from the same area of red-brown staining, so you make an assumption that they're all related. It came from what I was told, it came from one area of red-brown stain at the scene.
And you, of course, know as a forensic criminalist that bloodstains can contain multiple contributors, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You don't know as you sit here which blood stain found at the scene related to which solo cup in the bag, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No, it was my understanding they were all taken from the same stain, but I was not there.
From the same scene or,
Stain, excuse me. It was my understanding they were all taken from the same stain.
okay. If they in fact were taken from multiple stains, you would have no way of knowing that as you sit here.
That's correct.
And ultimately, once you did take that swab from that single solo cup, what did you do with the rest of that blood evidence?
I left that with the Canton Police Department.
Was there any of the swab, by the way, I should ask this, I've been saying swabs. Was there one swab taken of that one?
Let me just point this out real quick. Kate asks, LTL Media, does the family watch your channel? Is this how you were invited? We cannot wait to hear about it. So we'll let you know this. Yes, the family does watch my channel. I was out in front of the court the other day. Mr. and Mrs. Reed were out there. I walked by them. I said good morning to them. Mrs. Reed turned around and thanked me for what I've been doing on this channel for the past, what are we covering this? Almost 8 months. And thanked me for the donations to Karen's defense fund. And that was such a great moment to have that moment with them. So yes, they are aware. And yes, I was invited through the family. So I was invited. Okay, let's keep playing on.
From that one solo cup, or were there multiple swabs taken?
There were 2 swabs taken.
Of those 2 swabs, did you seek to do DNA testing, or was DNA testing done on either one of those or both of them?
DNA testing was not done on those swabs.
So as we sit here now, there's been no DNA confirmation of who that blood relates to, I should say.
There was no testing done on it at all.
And so therefore, we would not know if there were multiple contributors to those stains or that swab that you took from that single solo cup.
That's correct.
Okay. And again, the
Right,
remainder
right,
of all of that solo cup, as well as all the other 5 solo cups, was retained by Canton Police at the Canton Police Department in the control of the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, correct?
I don't know who was in control of it once I returned it to the Canton Police Department.
Who did you return it to at the Canton Police Department? Whom, I should say.
I believe I gave it to a Canton police officer. I don't know which officer that was.
Michael Proctor was at the Sally Port at the time that you were doing your examination, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Did he not take control of it himself?
Not that I saw. I don't know who took control of them once I was done with my collection.
They have, you just don't know.
Correct.
Okay. Going back to some of the damage that you did note on the vehicle, that vehicle looked like it had been driven to a certain degree, right?
Objection.
Can you answer that?
I'm not. If you could clarify the question, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Terrible question. Let me try it again.
Jackson.
That vehicle was not a vehicle that had clearly just come off the showroom floor and had not been in use based on your examination.
I don't think I am qualified to make that kind of decision.
It looked like
Here's another point too that I find very interesting. Why was Karen's car at one point with all those photos? By the way, their crime scene tape, they just let it fall and drape across a potential murder weapon. And why was Karen's car looked to be washed or clean? That was very interesting. I saw a lot of people making that notation across Twitter and across Facebook as well. They were asking, like, why does her car look clean? Look like it had been washed. And their sloppy police work of taping off the piece of evidence, the main piece of evidence in this, the car. I'm sorry, the SUV. Very sloppy.
there was some normal wear and tear on the car.
Other than the specific items that I pointed out earlier, the dent and the scratches, the exterior was in overall good condition.
Hey, right.
So I can't say specifically
Who's
if
it
it
all
was
lead back
driven
to?
other. I don't think I can make that conclusion unless you want to rephrase the question.
you didn't have any reason to believe that car was in any other condition than it had been owned and driven by somebody, right? Or could you make that conclusion?
I don't think I can make that conclusion.
So it could have been an absolutely brand new, right off the showroom floor car?
I guess I don't have any understanding of what could have happened to it in the showroom. I'm not sure I understand the line of questioning.
Why don't we move along?
Fair enough.
Excuse me.
I guess what I'm asking is,
Right, Dwight.
you've done some damage analysis in the past, obviously, this was not your first rodeo, right?
I don't do damage analysis on vehicles.
Okay. Did this car look like it had reasonably normal wear and tear on it? That's my question.
I don't feel comfortable answering that question.
Okay. Ultimately, the right rear taillight housing was removed, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Were you the person, Ms. Hartnett, who actually used the tools to remove that taillight, be it screwdrivers, wrenches, anything else?
No.
Who was that actually did that work?
It was a Canton police officer that had entered the garage, and as I was removing it, he offered to help. He said he knew how to basically take it out of the housing, which at that point, I was not sure how I would do that.
Okay. I'd like to show you an exhibit that you'd been shown just a few minutes ago before the lunch break, 187, with the board's permission.
Okay.
Does that look like the same housing that you removed from the SUV, or you saw being removed from the SUV?
Yes, that is the taillight housing that I submitted to the lab from the.
There's no flipping way. There's no flipping way. I mean, if it was John's head that hit that taillight, and I don't want to be graphic here. I'm trying to be very respectful. Okay. So I want everybody to understand this. Okay. I'm just trying to give my analysis. I'm trying to be very respectful to John. Okay. And the situation. One, there would be blood, again, blood all over this. Okay. There would be blood. There would be a tissue, a sample, something. Let's just say his face, those facial injuries. Okay. There would be blood on that taillight. And two, and I'm trying not to be graphic, so please, I'm trying to do this very respectful. The injuries to John's head would be massive. It would be like hitting a brick wall. We wouldn't just have a gash. You'd have multiple skull fractures, or a big multiple skull fracture where this impact was. His nose would have been caved in. His face would have been caved in. There would be blood splatter all over this light. There's no way. I mean, I took auto body in high school. I dealt with these I dealt with taillights before and headlights are moving. Granted, it's back in the 90s, but I would almost say back in the 90s, the plastics probably have changed. I would say, for now, they're probably a lot more secure and the plastic's more dense. Considering this is an SUV, you got to take into mind, an SUV is not like a car. A car is to commute. SUVs, you're going to go four-wheeling. You might have to drive up a rocky road. You might be in the wooded area somewhere. So these lights are really made to withstand all of that type of impact and abuse that it's going to take. Sunlight beating on this thing for hours and hours and hours and hours a day. So they're really strong. It's in a truck. It's an SUV. They're going to make these strong. They don't want these SUVs to drive down the road and have flimsy taillights, and they're going to be blowing taillights out or breaking, getting brittle from the sun or whatever it may be. I mean, these are strong pieces of, the material that they use, the polycarbonate or plastic material they use. I don't see it. I don't see it. I mean, maybe I'm blind, but I'm just not seeing it. All right, let's play through this here.
Garage.
Off on my
Ultimately,
rant.
there was a swab taken, you mentioned on direct examination, of that taillight somewhere on the house, correct?
Yes,
And then I look at like the dents, like, dude, if you're denting And you got to think where those dents are in that car, that metal is, it's not like you're hitting the side of a fender. If I go to a fender and I probably slap it hard, it's going to make a dent. But where they're saying that this dent is, it's a very thick piece of steel. There's not much give to it there, like a fender or a door. If I kick a door, it's going to probably easily dent. I kick a fender, it's probably going to easily dent. If I kick where they're saying that that dent is in that, on the back of that car, that's hard to do. That, you know, you would almost need like a hammer or something to make that dent.
Took a swab from that taillight.
Where exactly did you take that swab from?
I took it from the outer exposed areas, which would have been on the outer side of the vehicle. So I did not take it from the internal, what would have been the internal portion of the taillight when it was intact.
Can you point with a laser pointer exactly where you swabbed that taillight housing?
Sure. Is there a way that, can it get zoomed in just a little bit so I can differentiate the silver in the front? I'm having a little trouble.
Is that zoomed in enough or do you need more?
I believe so. I can start. So I took it from the red area here that would have been exposed. And then if we could zoom in a little bit more just on this front area so I can differentiate between the internal structures and the external.
Was it one swab?
Yes, that's correct.
So you swabbed multiple areas with one swab and then submitted that.
Yes.
So you don't know as you sit here where, if any DNA was detected, where that DNA may have come from,
No, that's correct.
other than the general housing altogether.
Yes. So then just to finish your previous question, I
I'm
did,
sorry, I didn't mean to-
that's what, it's just I couldn't see it. So this area here, which would have been the external portion of the taillight. So the areas I did not swab were any areas that would have, when the taillight was intact, been protected by the outer plastic housing of the taillight.
Is your testimony, Ms. Hartnett, that what you just pointed to was the exterior portion of the taillight, bottom left?
No, just this piece of plastic here is the exterior, the exterior piece of plastic.
And you swabbed that area as well as other areas on the exterior, like the red upper right.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. As you swab that, the DNA test does not differentiate where you swab, just that you swab, correct?
Yes, that's correct. That was all one swab, one collection.
Got it. So we can't define whether the DNA was to the upper right, on the outside of the lens, or some other place that you pointed to.
That's correct.
And of course, you're familiar with touch DNA, et cetera, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Touch an item, walk away, sweaty palms.
Yeah, let me just show this real quick. Here's me in back of a 570. So I'm 6 foot. Okay. John's like 6'2". Where in this line right here would cause that to break? Seriously. Where in that line? Here. What? My sternum would be broken. My sternum would be broken. It was a little thinner back then too. But my arm would be broken. My sternum would be broken. I mean, you would have a body injury. And there's no way, I consider this like a softer target than a head. My arm would be shattered. So I'm just trying to line up here. John's a little bit taller than me. He would be, his waist would probably be, his gut would probably be lined up with that. And I don't have a pen, but I don't know if you can see my cursor. If you can see my cursor, this portion of the taillight would probably be more lined up with his area here in his stomach, because he's about 2 inches taller than me. So I mean, that's, what they call the breadbasket. I just don't see it. And that is a 570. Isn't that funny? All right, let's go back to testimony and let's round up this stream. All right, here we go.
Likelihood I just left some DNA on this podium, correct?
Yes, you can transfer skin cells by touching an item.
Thank you.
Oh, and by the way, I'm glad that I just heard that. So for any of y'all that watch the Idaho 4 case and say touch DNA is a bunch of bullshit, she just confirmed it right there. And granted, her credentials are pretty questionable, but you know, that was the whole thing about the knife snap in the Idaho 4 case. You know, oh, it can't be, you know, it's touch DNA, it's touch DNA. Well, it does exist, and touch DNA can be brought up in cases, because that was the whole argument there. And Idaho 4 is just another mess, and that's another case that I'm going to get back into eventually. But anyway, I digress. Let's go.
We can take that down with the court's permission. Sure. You also indicated that you collected glass from the rear bumper of Miss Reed's Lexus, correct?
Yes, I have it as a parent class, but
Wow,
yes.
As a parent glass, fair enough.
Nettie talking to Karen.
You labeled that as item 3-3, and it was 5 pieces of glass labeled A through E, right? A, B, C, D, E. Is that
May I refer to my notes?
with the court's permission?
Yes.
Oh, you're right, Lisa. I mean, you don't have to tell me. All right, let's speed this up.
I'm just unfamiliar with the lettering A through E. I don't believe I have that in my notes. If you could refer to the document that you have.
Is it possible that, and this is just ignorance on my part, is it possible that once you submitted that for further testing, somebody else may have labeled those individual pieces A through E? You did not?
That's possible. I did not label them A through E.
Okay, got it. Understood. Thank you for that clarification. As a matter of fact, you labeled it as quantity 1, correct? On an evidence submission form?
In the LIMS system, that's correct. Each item is, that quantity value is only used for specific things. So when I submit something as one item, it doesn't matter how many pieces it actually is. It's just, I'm submitting it as one item.
So in other words, one group.
That's correct.
But it's so we're clear, and I want to make sure that these numbers are crystal clear. In that group, under 3-3, there were 5 pieces of apparent glass that you recovered, correct?
I don't have the exact number in my notes, and honestly, it's difficult to tell from my picture, so I don't want to say that I saw 5 pieces of glass.
Did you not annotate that somewhere, that you recovered 5 pieces?
Again, I have a photograph of it, but it's difficult to see on this printed page. So I didn't specifically write 5 pieces anywhere.
Okay, well, okay, then let me see if I can do it this way. Instead of pitching, let's cash. The person that you submitted it to would have annotated exactly what the grouping was that you submitted to try to be accurate.
I'm the one that initially, after the item was sent to fingerprinting, then I examined the item, but I didn't write down exactly how many pieces of glass were present. I just took a photo.
And as you sit here, you don't recall necessarily how many pieces you took off that bumper.
Correct. And the quality of the photo does not allow me to see that at this point.
Okay, let's take a look at that photo. With the court's permission, this is exhibit 168. Can we show that? Display that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, listen, I got to kind of probably agree with that too. I mean, essentially all this is going to do is she's terrible at her job. We've realized that. Lally essentially squashed her in the beginning. I wouldn't even put her on the scene, but because she found that hair and found that glass, Lally knew that, you know, supposedly found this hair in this glass. Lally knew that he had to put her up on that stand and try to justify to the jury that she's proficient. Oh no, she went back through her training. Her supervisor sat with her to try to rebuild her credibility. I think she was just told to do what she was told to do after the fact, after everything was conjured up here in the Sally Port. Come in and do your job now. You know, that's how I kind of see this person. So yeah, I gotta probably go along with you, Casey.
And if we could, Mr. Bates, with the court's permission, can we zoom in on the area, and a little bit bigger than that, capture all of the plaques. Zooming in at this point, and I would ask you, Ms. Hartnett, do you recognize this photo? It's zoomed a little bit. Do you still recognize it?
Yes, I do.
Is that a photograph that you caused to be taken at the Sally Port on February 1st, 2022?
I believe it was February 2nd, right? Did we, or it's February 1st now? We agreed it's February 1st. My apologies. Yes, on February 1st, I did request that photo be taken of the apparent pieces of glass.
Okay. And I know you can't see necessarily every piece. Can you use your laser pointer and point to a piece?
Sure.
Excuse me.
Okay, got it. So that's the largest of the pieces, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And it's correct that none of these pieces of apparent glass were embedded in the bumper. They weren't dug in, stuck into that hard plastic, correct?
No, I do not have that. I do not have that notation that they were embedded, just they were on the bumper.
As a matter of
That
fact,
was
they were physically perched on
Right,
top
that was a
of that
big
hard
thing.
plastic horizontal bumper, correct?
To my recollection, they were just sitting on the bumper, yes.
Okay. And do you know, just in your experience, and if we could leave this up for just a moment while I ask the next couple of questions, Your Honor.
Okay.
Do you know where Dighton, Massachusetts is?
I know the general area.
Remember
How
that.
far would you say that is from Canton?
I don't know, maybe a half an hour. I'm not exactly sure.
Do your notes indicate that the vehicle was recovered from Dighton and towed back to Canton and placed in the Sally Port before you started your examination?
Yes,
So and you also had been apprised before you began your examination that the incident in question took place in Canton, correct?
yes, that's correct.
So you knew as you were looking at this vehicle and doing your examination, the vehicle had to have been driven by definition from Canton to Dighton and then towed back from Dighton back to Canton, correct?
I was informed that the car was recovered in Dighton.
And ultimately either driven back or towed back, one of the ways, some way it ended up back in Canton, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so if Dighton is, how far would you say Dighton is from Canton?
again, I'm really guessing. I would say maybe a half an hour,
30 miles?
potentially. I don't know exactly. I was never in Dighton.
Okay, so according to your notes, the glass pieces that we're looking at on the back of this bumper would have traveled, let's call it for round
This is
figures,
insane.
about 60 miles in a
I
blizzard
know.
before you saw it.
I don't know when.
And before that too, it went from Fairview to Meadows. What I'm trying to run it through now. Fairview to Meadows, then we went back to Fairview, then we went to Dighton, and then it went to Canton. and this glass just magically stayed right on top the whole time with the hair the whole time. Yeah, I mean, come on, man.
And the glass pieces were ended up on the bumper, so I couldn't say.
And of course, you knew that on February 1st, you knew a few days earlier on the 29th, there had been a pretty significant snowstorm here in Massachusetts, correct?
Yes, I did have that information.
And that blizzard included high winds, freezing rain, snow, all the good stuff with a blizzard, correct?
I don't recall the exact weather conditions of the blizzard.
But irrespective, after all of that, whatever that was, you saw these 5 pieces just sitting perched on the top of the bumper, not embedded in any way, correct?
That's correct.
And you recovered those with little bitty tweezers, correct?
Yes.
Michelle, thank you for
we
the
can
10.
take this down.
She
With
says
court
this
permission.
case is out of control. Come on.
You testified on direct
I agree.
examination that you also found a hair on that rear panel, the quarter panel of the car, correct?
Yes, at the time of the scene, I noted it was an apparent hair, correct?
And the apparent hair, and I'll try to use that same word, I keep forgetting, you'll correct me. That apparent hair was not sitting on the horizontal bumper, but on a vertical portion of the quarter panel, correct?
That's correct.
Did you find the hair, or was that hair pointed out to you by somebody else?
I believe I located the hair.
How exactly was that hair secured to that vertical panel?
Yeah.
If
It's interesting.
you can explain that.
It didn't appear to be secured in any way. It was just on that quarter panel.
Okay, so it wasn't taped,
No,
it wasn't glued?
No.
Wasn't stapled?
No.
It was not affixed in any way whatsoever. It was just perched on that vertical panel of the SUV, correct?
That's correct.
And for you to remove it, and by the way, you found this at the same time that you found the general time, that you found the glass pieces as well.
That's correct.
So that hair potentially would have had to make that same 60-mile round trip
Right.
in the same blizzard.
Amazing how that happens.
At the time, I don't know when that hair was deposited on the vehicle.
Right. And it didn't take you much to remove that hair, correct?
Yeah, you know, Scott, and I'm glad that you said this because I've made this point on my lives forever now. So you're telling me that a Boston police officer is killed on the lawn of another police officer, left to dead and dying. You have the potential murder weapon in your possession, and you don't process that car for 4 days after you took possession of it? A little strange. I don't know. Boston police officer is dead. I would think you probably want to start processing the murder weapon, potential murder weapon, right away. Would make more sense, wouldn't it? But why wait 4 days? 4 days.
I picked it up with a pair of
We don't need
tweezers.
that.
Didn't give you any resistance.
Not that I recall.
I'd like to take a look at that hair if we can. I know you've seen it just a few minutes ago. I want to look at it one more time. With the court's permission, these are exhibits 165 and 173. If we could start with 165 and publish those.
Okay.
Does that look like a close-up view of, actually, is it zoom? Yeah. Can we pull that out?
You have white hair, dog hair.
Your Honor, may I do this a different way?
All right.
This is actually, with the court's permission,
So I didn't get to watch this. So I'm kind of coming back and maybe y'all can fill me in. Was this hair analyzed and it was found out to be John's hair, or do they not know yet? Or are we going to get anybody that's going to come up and say, this is John's hair? Like, have they confirmed what this hair is, or it's just a hair? It's just a hair that they found. It's just a hair. Is that what the Commonwealth's rolling with? It's just a hair? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I guarantee you, defense team has probably tested it, and they got the answer of what it is. I guarantee the defense is going to go, it's probably a dog hair. It's probably old man Rickenbacker's pubic hair. The hair wasn't tested for DNA. Oh boy. We got problems. This is so fucked up. I can't get over this case. It's so fucking corrupt, man. I thought we're gonna get some kind of answer here because I didn't get to see this, and I try not to watch this. Oh yeah, that's right. I remember the fiber from the snow brush, the horse hair, right? It's horse hair. I guarantee you they probably tested it. Damn, that comes up a horse hair or old man Rickenbacker's pubic hair. We got a problem.
Okay, I'll get to that in a second. I want to tell you.
I mean, holy smokes, this case is insane. The more insane things I see.
John, may I proofread yours?
Yes.
Thank you. 163. These are zooms that last a month. If I may hand you those very briefly, could you take a look at those 4 photographs and tell me if you recognize the first 2 to be exhibits 165 and 173. They're not marked on there, but what you earlier looked at.
Okay.
Do those appear to be those two exhibits that you earlier saw?
Yes, I don't know what numbers they were, but I do remember seeing these photos earlier.
Fair enough. And then the second two photos, do those appear to
Thank
be
you, Vincent, for
zoomed
the two.
photos of the same two photographs?
Yes, they do.
With the court's permission, I would ask that the zoomed photos be marked as next in order.
Is there any objections to Ally?
Yeah, I pointed out
No,
before.
Your
May I approach?
Yes.
Yeah, you're right, Scott. I'm telling you, it looks like a pubic hair. All right, let's speed up for time here.
Thank you.
May I approach?
Yes.
We're looking at what's previously been marked as 165. Does that appear to be a photo of the hair?
Would it be possible just to zoom in on that,
Absolutely.
the
This is not
sticker?
an eye contest.
I mean, to me, it would
And just a
look
little
more
bit,
like
I'm
a
just trying to
dog
read
hair.
the letter on the white marker. Yes, so that, correct.
So that hair looks, as we're looking at it, you will agree, that hair looks like almost like a backward C, correct? In other words, it looks like it's more vertical than flat in that photograph,
That's not a
correct?
human hair.
I would agree, it looks like a C on the side of the car.
If we could go to exhibit 173. And this is the same hair photographed a second time, correct?
If we
Thank
could
you.
again,
Yeah,
just
me
zoom
too,
in on that
Lisa.
sticker.
I can't wait. Way too thick for human hair, man.
Yes, that's correct.
That's not
Ms.
human
Hartman, does
hair.
it look to you like between the first and the second photographs, that hair has moved? It's no longer an inverted C, but a C.
It's not human hair, man.
I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I see the two ends, which may still be making contact with the vehicle. I can't make that determination based on this photo.
Fair enough. So that was sort of my next question. I'll just dovetail it this way. Did it appear to you that the hair, which is curled, was making contact with the vehicle on the top point and the bottom?
I would say from this photo, I honestly can't tell if those two ends are coming off the vehicle or touching the vehicle. I
would
just can't
say
make that
that's more of a
determination.
dog hair.
But you would agree
And a
that that
human
hair
hair,
was
it's
somewhat precariously
like a
perched on that
shepherd hair.
vertical quarter panel, correct?
Objection.
I want to sustain the objection, ask it differently.
Mr. Bates, we'll finish with that. With the court's permission, we can take that down. If you take a look at the zoomed photos that have just been marked as 259 and 260 respectively, can you take a look at those side by side? And when you're finished, I'd like to ask you a question or two about those.
Okay.
Does it look from your perspective, seeing those photos side by side, that the hair appears to have gently moved just a little bit between the two photos?
I just don't think I can make that determination. They're taken from different angles. I just don't know. I can see that they have a curl in both, but I don't know which ends are making contact or if the ends are coming off the vehicle.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you know what I noticed too is like Jackson didn't really attack her, just kind of let her fall into her own shit. You know what I mean? I mean, I think his approach with her was pretty soft, and just kind of discrediting her, you know, her work, not really coming at her hard like you know with like Jen McCabe. It's a lot different. Scott, the moving hair.
There's one more exhibit I'd like to take a quick look at and ask you a couple of questions about. With the court's permission, exhibit 195, which is a shirt.
Okay.
I'm wondering if they did, PBJ. I think they probably did. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? And then they come up and say, oh, the hair that you're talking. Jackson says he only needs 4 days. 4 days to prove that Karen Reed didn't do this. I mean, we're seeing it right now I mean, Lowry's sinking himself, the Commonwealth sinking himself. But I wouldn't put it past him that he did. And then he's going to come out and be like, oh, by the way, your little hair on the back of the car, it's dog hair. It's snow brush hair. It's from old man Rickenbacker's pants. We need to speed up for time.
Do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes, I do.
And you saw this just a few minutes ago on direct examination as well, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You indicated that you took 2 swabs.
Microdots. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. If you're not following Microdots on Twitter, you need to at Drop Microdots. I love the little meme that they put out the other day and said, look, even the Commonwealth knows that a dog bit John. And they're even representing it by little teeth that they've put on. I'm trying to put this together. Teeth that they put on his sweatshirt to mark where John got bit. So I thought that was great.
From the
Very
quote
clever.
area around damage numbers 1 through 9 of the gray sweatshirt, end quote, correct?
Even they're
Yes, that's
saying
correct.
they get
Can
bit
you
by a
describe
dog.
for the
Look at
jurors
this.
how you took those swabs, and were they of all 9 or a select number of the 9? How did you do that?
I moistened 2 cotton swabs with sterile water, and then I took those 2 swabs. May I use the pointer to just show?
Of course.
And I vigorously swabbed around. I don't know if it's working. There we go. This entire area. So every area of damage, I swabbed around.
All right, I want to just point on number 1. See this hole on number 1 right here, this dog bite right here on number 1. You see that with my cursor? I don't know if y'all can see that. Can you see where I was touching? Just give me a yes. Okay, I'm gonna go to that spot again. You see this right here where number 1 is? See that dog bite? Okay, check this out. I don't know if y'all saw this. If you're not following me on Facebook, you need to. LTL Media. If you're not following me on Twitter, you need to. Check this out. This is I found this from an evidence that was in a dog bite case. Look at this. Look at the hole. And then what they did is they took canine impressions and they matched them up to those holes to confirm that it was that dog. Let me just bring my screen out here. Hang on. That's a little better. You can see the holes. They're exactly almost the same. Almost the same. And if we had Chloe, we could get bite impressions of Chloe and match them up to that sweater. All right, let's keep playing through this testimony.
Found all of it using the same 2 swabs. So it was one collection from all those areas.
One collection on swab 1 and one collection on swab 2. You just repeat the process.
No, I took them exactly at the same time. So I held the 2 swabs together.
Oh.
And as I'm swabbing, I'm rotating the swabs to make sure that all the exterior of the swab is coming into contact with that material in order to collect equal samples, or at least attempt to collect equal samples on each swab.
Okay, we can take that. Thank you. And you indicated that this was the first time that you had done swabbing specifically for the purpose of trying to find either canine DNA or animal.
That's correct.
Had you been trained at the time that you took the swabs, had you been trained or received any training or any teaching about the relationship between keratinized tissue and DNA?
No,
Do you know what keratinized tissue is?
no.
Did you photograph exactly
Thanks,
where any of those swabs were taken, or just notate it in your notes?
I notated in my notes that overall photo is the photo that I used to describe the sample that I collected.
And I think it probably goes without saying, you didn't videotape your swabbing technique on that shirt either, correct?
That's correct.
You did include a handwritten note on your report that you found, quote, debris from T-shirt 717 and shirt 718, correct?
I performed a debris collection on each of those items. I don't know if that's what you're referring to.
That is what I'm referring to.
Okay.
Okay, so there was a note in your report that you had recovered some debris or done some debris collection, correct?
That's correct.
And you indicated in your note that the debris was from shirt 717 and shirt 718. Is that right?
May I refer to my notes?
With the court's permission.
Thank you. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And shirt 717 is which shirt?
The orange t-shirt,
And shirt 718 is which shirt?
the long sleeve gray shirt.
All right. So you took, is the right word scrapings?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. You took scrapings from both shirts. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
And then combined those together and submitted that as the quote unquote debris that was assigned a new item number 7-18.18, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So as you sit here, you don't know where the debris came from specifically other than the two shirts. Could be one, could be the other, could have been a combination of both.
Yes, that's correct.
Did you describe in detail anywhere the actual debris that you found? Little fibers, little hairs, little pieces of green or blue or whatever? And
If I was able to pick out a hair or a fiber, I would have attempted to do that from the debris collection. The debris collection was just anything that was left on the item that I was not able to pick off.
Okay, and you did not note any debris item that was plastic or plasticine, anything like that, correct?
No, I did not make any kind of observations on the debris itself.
And there was no marker put on any part of the debris that was recovered, correct?
That's correct.
And there was no photograph taken of the debris,
That's correct.
and there was no videotape of the debris collected.
Correct.
When you received item 717 and item 718, that came in one evidence bag, did it not?
Yes, it did.
Your Honor, may I approach briefly? Yes. If you wouldn't mind taking a look at that, that's a photograph. I'd ask you to review and tell me if you recognize it. Not the photograph, but what's depicted in the photograph.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize that?
This is the container that contained it's a photo of the brown paper bag that contained the long sleeve gray shirt as well as the orange t-shirt.
May I approach, Your Honor? Yes. I could ask that be marked as next in order.
Any objections to Lally?
No, Your Honor.
Is it 2 minutes, one? May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you. This evidence bag notes, let me start over. This evidence bag is in the condition that it was in when you received it, meaning the writing on the back was already there when you received it.
Yes, that's correct.
And it notes that these items of evidence were collected by Trooper Proctor, correct?
Yes, correct.
And the date of collection was January 29, 2022, is that right?
I'd have to relook at that
Of course.
for the date.
May I approach? Yes.
Yes, I didn't.
So you got an answer.
My
Right, I think-
apologies. The date on there is January 29th, 2022.
So I don't have to walk back and forth, may I?
Yes.
Okay, does that look like what you're looking at, exhibit 261?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. See if I can stand out of the way. You see Trooper Proctor's name on the evidence bag as the person
Here we
that
go.
collected it.
Yes, that's correct.
And it also has a description of what's in the bag, and it shows both the orange t-shirt and the gray sweatshirt collected together and bagged together, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And the date, again, once again, on the upper right is January 29, 2022, correct?
Yes, that's,
Okay. You have no way of knowing, as you sit here, the journey that those two items of evidence took before they got to you in your lab, correct?
Yes, they're tracked as soon as they're entered into our laboratory system by us.
I didn't hear any of that. I'm so
My apologies. The item would be tracked as soon as it's submitted to our lab by us, by the crime lab.
Thank you. We can take this down, Your Honor. Thank you. The debris that you ultimately got from the shirt or shirts, you don't know if that debris may have been in the bag and the shirts picked up the debris in the bag or otherwise, correct?
Correct.
Because they were housed together,
Yes,
stored together.
that's correct.
Were you aware before you began your analysis on either one of those shirts that those shirts had been found at the bottom of an ambulance, on the floor of an ambulance at one point?
I don't have any knowledge of where the clothing, what condition the clothing in was before I got it.
Okay, and that probably answers my next question, but just for the record, you don't have any knowledge personally as you sit here that either one of the shirts or both of them were floor of a hospital room as well.
I have no information about where the shirts were.
One of the things that you did indicate was, in your direct examination, was how important it is to maintain sanitary conditions with evidence to avoid contamination, correct?
That's correct.
For instance, you wouldn't want to take the swabs that you so carefully utilized to swab an item of evidence and then, oops, drop it on the floor. You would have to discard that item and then start over, correct?
If a swab is dropped on the floor, we don't discard it. We would preserve it, but that would be a note that we would have to put in our file, and that, yes, that swab would not be tested any further.
Right, because of the possibility of cross-contamination.
Couple more minutes and we're going to wrap this up. I know it's getting late, just over 2 hours. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I'm not going to stream tomorrow. So I'm going to miss, unfortunately, testimony tomorrow as I have to work and I have to work late, but I will be in court again on Thursday. Jeez, today is Tuesday. I will be in court on Thursday. And when I come out after court, I will have a live stream. I'm guessing probably right around 1:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If court gets out at that time, it might be noon. I'm not too sure, but I will do a stream immediately right after. And then Thursday night will be my night show at 8 p.m. So I want to thank everybody for donating so far tonight. What do we have for a total? Casey, what do we have for a total? But we got probably another 5 minutes and we'll wrap this one up. And then we'll kick back the total to Karen, the 25%. And I'll make that donation. And what I do, if you haven't seen, I posted up the donation on my Facebook page, on my YouTube community page. And then the ultimate vet is if you just go right to the free Karen Reed link, you can go right there and you'll see LTL chat raiser 6424. And then we'll have the total amount. All right, let's try to finish
Correct.
this one.
And
I'm going to speed it up a little bit.
at least according to the evidence bag, those two shirts were in the custody and control of which trooper before you got them?
Trooper Proctor collected the evidence according to the bag.
Thank you. Ultimately, Ms. Hartnett, every single piece of taillight material and clothing that you've described in your testimony today on direct and cross-examination, all of that evidence was presented to you or to the lab at one time in one bundle.
Thanks, Tim.
On March 14th, 2022, correct?
No, that's incorrect.
Which portion was in the lab before March 14th?
The tail light that I collected from the vehicle was submitted prior to that, as well as any other items that I took from the vehicle.
Okay, that was a great answer and my mistake. I knew that and I forgot. So the taillight housing you took on the first.
Correct.
Okay. Every other item other than the taillight housing itself, which you took personal possession of, all the taillight fragments, all the clothing, orange shirt, gray shirt, jeans, shoes, everything was all submitted in one fell swoop on March 14th, 2022. Is that right?
No.
What else am I incorrect about?
So I just wanted to clear anything that was collected from the vehicle, as well as the swabs from the red Solo cups and the drinking glass that I was presented with at Canton PD was submitted by me on February 1st. The other items, the clothing items were submitted together And then there was another submission that had the fingernails and the known blood standards. So there were several submissions. So I'm hesitant to lump it all into one because it did happen on different dates.
Okay, fair enough. Can we agree that the earliest submission, with the exception of the stuff that you actually took with you from the South one, the taillight material, whatever swabs you took, I'm sorry, the taillight housing and whatever swabs you took, all of the other material that was submitted to the lab, all of the other evidence, the earliest date anything was submitted was March 14th, 2020.
If you don't mind, I'm just going to take another look at my submission forms just to clarify.
May I approach?
Yes.
I think I have, it's a two-page doc, I can show Mr. Riley. Is that a copy of your submission form?
Yes, it is.
Okay. If you could familiarize yourself with that for just a quick second.
Yes.
All right. I think we've gotten there. I think we've made our point. It's getting late. So we're at about $1.92. 25% is going to put us at 48. I'll round it to 50. We've met our goal for Karen tonight. I'll kick back $50 to Karen Reed. Really quick, and I know this has been kind of a topic of conversation, and it has been this piece that came up on trial, and it kind of was nixed out and not talked about. And a lot of people had questions about it, and they said, oh, you know, could it be a piece off Higgins's Jeep? And I mean, when I looked at it, it looks very thin, like a thin piece of plastic. And then I had to start to kind of think about what the hell do I think it is? Now, I thought when I looked at it, just judging on that little plastic piece that you see on the inside, I thought that it looked something like this, like a measuring cup. You know, like when you look in the inside of 70 from Total Awesome. You know, like when you look in the inside of a cup, you see that little divot that's inside of it. And this is supposed to be about, people were guesstimating about 6 inches apart. And I said, gee, I wonder if it was like a quart jug or something like that. You know, the bottom of a quart cup, a painting cup or something like that. Because what I see, and again, I'm estimating, I'm just thinking of things that I've seen in my life. I thought like something like this. See that little divot in the bottom, like right there? I said, gee, I wonder if it was like from a form. It looked like a lid from something on the bottom of a cup. So it was just very interesting. That's been talked about a lot. Another thing that I want to put to bed too. My sources, my very, very close sources, tell me that the belt that is on John's jeans is John's belt. I want to put that to rest. My very, very close sources tell me that is John's belt. They have had the belt. They've known about the belt. They've had it all along. So I wanted to make sure that everybody understands that, because they're like, oh, well, was John's belt black? Was it brown? How do we know? I'm looking at the camera right now. My close sources tell me that is John's belt. Okay. All right. So $70 will kick back to Karen tonight. I appreciate everybody. I will get that donation posted right after the stream. Thursday is going to be a very important day, a day that I am anticipating, and I am very honored to have the opportunity to sit in court and hear some trial testimony. Maybe I get Bukaki, maybe I get Proctor. I don't know. I have a feeling. Well, they're saying that Commonwealth's not even going to call Proctor. Interesting. That's your lead guy, man. But we'll have to see what happens. All right, everybody. I'm going to get out of here. It's late. Thank you all so much. I love all of you. Thank you for the donations. We're going to kick back $70 to Karen Reed tonight. And Thursday afternoon, we'll have a live stream just after court. We'll hang out for a little bit, and then I'm going to roll back to the studio. Actually, not the studio if the air conditioner is not on. We'll probably have to do it virtually. I'll come back here and do it out of my bedroom again. But thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate you all. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the stream. Leave a comment after it posts. And I'll talk with everybody soon. I'm going to hit the outro. Good night, everybody. I love you. Bye.
Take the change and take the track, run over me, it's time to die.